Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Cool. Sorry, so I had to make a protein shake.
You gotta have protein to talk about DMT, man.
It's plant-based protein. I think it's pea protein.
There you go.
Yeah. Did you email me the thing?
Um, yeah, I sent it to Psychedelic Club of Denver. I think I did that. Let me make sure I did. Or maybe I didn't. Yes, I did. Did you get it? Can't hear you.
I've tried other tryptamines if you want to talk about non-DMT tryptamines.
Like what?
4-ACO DMT is
Mhm.
fantastic. That's my DJ name.
I don't know. That's like your favorite, right?
That one's really good. Yeah. It's like mushrooms except better. I really like 4-HO MET.
Lost you again.
4-HO MET.
Uh-huh. I'm gonna let everybody in. Does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah, let's do the thing.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I say bring them all up. You know, as it seems appropriate.
Are we live on Facebook? Did you do the Facebook
Oh,
Live
I'm
thing?
going to do the Facebook Live thing right now.
Yes, you should be able to go down to the bar, and
Yeah.
then there should be like share on Facebook Live or something.
Yes. And Psychedelic Club of Denver.
Yeah, then it opens up.
Hi, everybody.
Window.
Hey.
Thanks for coming. I'm just trying to get this live on Facebook right now.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad everybody's learning how to do this. It's really connecting folks.
Yeah, it looks okay. Looks like we are live on Facebook.
Live on Facebook. Hello, world.
Hi, world.
So what are we talking about tonight, Andrew?
Tonight we're going to be talking about DMT and 5-MeO DMT.
Whoa, what's 5-MeO DMT?
So 5-MeO-T is like a chemical derivative of what we call DMT, which is N DMT. I'm not a chemist, so I don't really know what all of that means. I think that the 5-MeO has a methoxylated group in the 5 position. Again, I don't know what that means, but it's like 5 to 10 times more powerful than N DMT is. And it also has really different effects on your being.
Man, that's crazy. My friends told
crazy.
me DMT was the strongest drug, and you're saying there's something 5 to 10 times stronger?
There's something 5 to 10 times stronger, and I would say that the experience itself is like exponentially more powerful, if one can even say such a thing.
More powerful than like a DMT breakthrough.
It depends how you use the word powerful, I guess.
Sure, that's a good point.
You know, so the reason I called this meeting "The Magic and the Power" is because that's a Terrence McKenna quote. He called DMT the magic and 5-MeO DMT the power, and I actually think that's a pretty interesting way to look at a difference between the two of them, because DMT, for anybody who's tried it, is pretty fucking magical, and 5-MeO DMT is pretty powerful. Yeah.
So where does 5-MeO?
Where does 5-MeO DMT come from? Is that what you said? I lost you at the end there.
Yeah, where does it come from?
So it's endogenously produced in a lot of different living things, much like DMT and N DMT is. The only kind of 5-MeO DMT I've ever had is produced in the Bufo alvarius, the Sonoran desert toad. but it also grows in a number of plants, and you might find it in certain ayahuasca brews or in yopo, which is that snuff that they have in the Amazon that they blow up your nose and it makes you trip really hard. That's
Yeah, if it has 5-MeO DMT in it, I'm sure it does make you trip really hard.
Yeah, right. I've never tried it. I heard it's very painful, but such is life.
Have you ever snorted N DMT?
Have you ever snorted an MDMT?
No, I don't have the balls to it, but my friends have done it, and they say it's very painful.
I've never snorted an MDMT. I don't know if I'm not really one for putting things in my nose, to be perfectly honest.
Sure, I really like snorting things, but I'm not that brave.
Yeah, you were just telling me before about 4-ACO DMT. I think you snort that, right?
Yeah, it's like snortable synthetic mushrooms, basically.
That sounds like something I need to try someday in my life.
I mean, I like it enough that it's my DJ name. So check me out on SoundCloud at 4-ACO DMT.
Check Toby out. So I was thinking maybe I'd just talk a little bit about just some brief history, and then I think we're going to just spend most of our time today talking about experiences and how it affects your worldview. And obviously, I'm a really big fan of having everybody in the group kind of just shout out, join in. If you have any questions, put them in the chat or just yell at us. What do you think about that, Toby? We'll just talk a bunch
yeah, we're gonna talk a bunch. If you got anything you want to say, put it in the chat, and then we'll open it up at the end. We'd love to hear your guys' experiences with 5 or N DMT, and I don't know, let's connect as a community at the end and answer some questions.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. So whenever I talk about any kind of DMT, I like to talk about the fact that there's a lot of different kinds of tryptamines, which is what the T, it stands for dimethyltryptamine. That's what DMT is. And there's a lot of tryptamines out there like psilocin and psilocybin. Those are probably the big ones in the news these days. Obviously, we're talking about N DMT and 5-MeO DMT today. But also, I think it's really cool to know that serotonin and melatonin are both tryptamines. And melatonin, I believe, does for sure come from the pineal gland, which is a place that we think may produce DMT also, although that hasn't been proven in human beings yet.
Yeah, that depends on who you talk to, right?
Yeah, well, so Rick Strassman put that in his book, that he really specifically said it was a hypothesis. And then people read that and they were like, oh, this is a fact. And nobody actually knows that we produce DMT in our pineal glands. We do know that it's produced in the pineal glands of rats. They found that out in an experiment. And I think where I put it down here, in 2013, they discovered that.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things about tryptamines in general, right, is that they interact on the same receptor as serotonin, right? That's fundamentally why they work, is that they're the same shape as serotonin is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what Toby is talking about here, Google serotonin and DMT and just like go to your images and take a look. They look so similar. It's really crazy. And so does psilocybin and psilocin. I think that's really exciting. I think it's super cool.
They didn't know that our brains made serotonin until they discovered psilocybin. Albert Hoffman, when he first analyzed what the active ingredient was in magic mushrooms, he discovered psilocybin, and it looks like there's one carbon molecule difference between psilocybin and serotonin, and before that they only knew about serotonin in our digestive system.
That's really cool.
So after that they realized it was in our brain, and that's why we have any type of SSRI or any type of psych med that works on your serotonin comes from magic mushroom.
Hooray for magic mushrooms giving us SSRIs.
Shout out to magic mushrooms. Shout out to Albert Hoffman for discovering. Like, I think it's really interesting. Like Desmond said, a lot of modern mental health came from psychedelic research.
Mm-hmm. And thank God we're back on that track. We really missed out on that for a while there. So historically, people have been taking DMT for about 5,000 years at least in the form of ayahuasca. I'm sure everybody here knows what ayahuasca is, but that's, you know, the oral method of consuming dimethyltryptamine, in which you consume it with a monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which shuts off the enzyme that blocks DMT from crossing your blood-brain barrier through your stomach. I'm sure I phrased that poorly, but basically MAOIs allow you to ingest DMT through your stomach, and that lasts for about 3 hours per cup, and is a hell of an experience. And it's so great. Today is actually the 1-year anniversary of my second day of taking ayahuasca for the first time. Yesterday was my first year anniversary of the first day.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm a whole new person.
Andrew.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for ayahuasca. I started coming to Psychedelic Club meetings because I took ayahuasca, and I was like, shit, I really need to connect with the community so that I can talk to people. So
yeah,
that's a nice little full
integration
circle.
is so important, right? So
is.
shout out to Psychedelic Club, and shout out to you for coming to share your experience.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, I've not had a chance to try ayahuasca. I've tried other forms of DMT and other forms of tryptamines, but I've not tried the tryptamine plus an MAOI combo yet.
It's really...
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to say it's really special, and I'm super excited for Toby to get the opportunity to try ayahuasca. What were you saying?
I was asking if anybody had tried changa.
Yes.
Good.
Changa is my favorite way to smoke DMT. For anybody who doesn't know, changa is a smokable form of DMT. It's DMT freebase, plus it has MAOIs in it, which is the thing I was mentioning, which is the MAOI inhibits the enzyme which blocks DMT from getting through your system in your stomach. And when you smoke it, it really elevates the experience. Everybody go smoke changa. Or, I mean, don't. I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything ever. But if you're interested, changa is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say.
Yeah, and that's another one I haven't tried, but it lasts longer than just smoking DMT by itself, right? The MAOI lets it float around in your brain longer.
Very much. Very much. Yeah.
And I find the experience of changa to be a little bit more like ayahuasca. Like over here, you've got ayahuasca, and over here, you've got smoking DMT, and changa is like somewhere here. It's like still pretty, it's a lot like smoking DMT, but it's just like a little bit closer in this direction. I find it to be a little more, I don't know, earthy, but it's still pretty sparkly and incredible. So just for a little bit more history, DMT was first synthesized in 1931 by Richard Helmuth Friedrich Mansk, and it was discovered as a byproduct of plants by Brazilian chemist Oswaldo Goncalves de Lima in 1946. And 5-MeO DMT actually hasn't been known for that long, and people haven't been smoking toad venom for all that long. People have only been smoking 5-MeO DMT since about the 70s, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. It's a really pretty new chemical, and is, as I said earlier, I think is the single most significant experience that can be had, let alone by a human being. I just think it is the most significant thing that exists, that experience.
Will you talk more about that experience? I'm not somebody who's had like the 5 experience. I've tried low doses, but not like the experience.
So I've smoked the toad venom 6 times, and 4 of those times were breakthrough experiences. And it's really hard to talk about because it's a completely just, what's the word that everybody always uses to describe psychedelics? I can't remember, but it's ineffable. It's totally ineffable. It's beyond words. But basically, you go beyond everything, and you become everything. But it's not like me, this person that's talking right now, becomes everything. It's like that person gets out of the way, and you start to recognize that everything is just this singular experience, and that everything is everything, and that also it's nothing. And like you're just simultaneously being everything and nothing. And it's being completely aware, completely and totally positively sure that God exists and that God doesn't exist. It's a non-dual experience, and this 5-MeO DMT experience has just gotten me totally fascinated with non-duality, and it's what I spend a lot of my time on now, just trying to wrangle with that. And of course, you know, about 15 minutes later, you come back and you're just this person lying in a bed. You know, before that, you were the consciousness that is all of existence wrapped into one moment, one eternal moment. And in the same way as it's everything and nothing, it's also forever and it's never. And one of the phrases that really resonated with me after I smoked 5-MeO DMT, after I smoked the toad venom for the first time, was, it was always already everything. That everything that is already was. It already is now. And that's just a lot of words to describe an experience that fundamentally is beyond description. And one of the things that really separates it out from N DMT is that there are no visuals. When you get a peak experience, there's no visuals whatsoever. And N DMT is really known for being like the psychedelic experience that we were sort of led to expect by the movies. You know, it's super bright and super exciting and all that kind of stuff. But 5-MeO is just blank. And it's just you, and it's just nothing. And it's so beautiful and also horrifying. It was both the most beautiful and the most horrifying experience I've ever had. So Toby, I don't know, why don't you tell us a little bit about what smoking or what taking N DMT has been like for you? I think you've got a little more experience with that than I do.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I've have a little bit of experience with 5. I've taken like lower doses, and it wasn't a very visual drug. And then
Mhm.
NMDMT, I would say, is the opposite. It's this hyper visual carnival ride. It's bright and it flashes and it goes fast. I don't know. It was the first like substance I think I had that made me like question reality. Like that's always been like the quintessential experience of my DMT experience has been, whoa, what is reality? Because it somehow feels realer than real.
Totally.
You take this experience and it's really short and powerful, but it's like way more real than, I don't know, right now, which is like crazy. How can something feel more real than real? But I don't know. I've always associated it with like meeting entities. I've met different entities. I've not necessarily had an experience with like machine elves, like Terrence talks about a lot, but I've definitely met entities who showed me crazy shapes and knowledge that couldn't exist. I don't know. Alex and Allison Gray do a great job of art that I think depicts that space, specifically Alex Gray.
Totally. I'm wondering actually if you could speak a little bit more to the entity phenomenon, because that's something that, you know, a lot of people really talk about with regards to DMT. That's kind of one of these common tropes around this substance. I've had some entity contact, but I would love to hear more from you about that.
Yeah, so I've had multiple, I don't know, 5 experiences with things that I'd call entities, and I'd say they were all different, distinct, energetic beings. And I don't know, it's hard to describe. I guess one of the most interesting trips I've had was this like flowery earth entity, and she was like made of shapes and symbols, and then she has this thing that she has this impossible sphere that like folds in on itself forever, like fractals in on itself, and she's just like holding it, gesturing, and trying to impart some knowledge. And I don't know. The crazy part, I think, is that somebody else told me they had the same experience. Somebody came to one of the integration circles at the Psychedelic Club, and they gave me like a shot-for-shot remake of this experience I had meeting this entity. They said that they met this entity, and they described her in a lot more words than I'm using here that sounded identical to the entity I met. And she was also holding this spherical shape that like fractaled in on itself for infinity. So I don't know. Based on that, I'm inclined to believe that they're more than just like a psychedelic hallucination, that maybe this is actually another consciousness that you're interacting with.
That's definitely how it feels to me when I go out there. And I really resonated with what you said about realer than real. I mean, sometimes when I come back from smoking DMT, I'm confused by this reality. You know, like this feels like bullshit once you've been out in that space. It's really weird. And one thing that I kind of wanted to highlight here is that a major difference between the extended experience of ayahuasca and smoking DMT is that usually when you take ayahuasca, you kind of maintain a tether with this reality. So like there's none of that holy shit, this is weird experience when you come back. When you come back from DMT, it's just like, this is the weirdest place you've ever been. This universe right here is just so bizarre. I really resonate with that feeling that there is a kind of inherent reality in the space that you get into there. One of the weirdest things that has ever happened to me in my whole life is I had this experience where at the very tail end of it, I had smoked some changa. And at the tail end, I was in this infinite space. That's one of the things about smoking DMT is things tend to be infinite. You see this one pattern and it literally goes forever. Any direction you look in, yeah, it's an infinite sphere everywhere. So I was looking and there were these like diagonal energetic lines and they all had these blue hands with red hearts on the back of them. They were spinning and they were shovels. It was hand shovel. And the shovels were actually like tipping over dirt and they were all just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I had this weird realization that like God is in the turn. So it's like in the space as you, when your hand is turning or the shovel is turning, there's a spot where like you lose the visualization. That's where God is, right? Where you can't see. That was like the realization I had there. So anyway, I had that experience. And then maybe 5 months later or something like that, I went with my friend to a plant store and I get chills thinking about this, but the dude had a wind chime in there. And of course it was hanging straight because, you know, gravity doesn't go diagonal, but it was blue hands with red hearts on the back and shovels. And so I literally saw something in this world months after having, you know, hallucinated it in the DMT space. And I've seen a few other things like that. I saw one of these infinite patterns I had seen once. I saw a woman walking around and her dress was the pattern that I had seen. It's so unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, I get weird synchronicities from psychedelics in general, but especially like NN and maybe even especially 5. I feel like there's crazy synchronicities I've experienced with my forages into them.
Mm-hmm. So, what has your experience with 5 been like? I know you said it hasn't been much.
Yeah, so I haven't like done a breakthrough dose or anything. I've just tried low vaporized doses,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels very like I'm journeying inward. DMT feels like I get propped, like NN feels like I get put in a rocket ship and blasted forward, and it feels almost like I'm collapsing inward with 5, like dissolving.
That's
less
interesting.
of a visual experience, more of an inner.
I hear that. That definitely resonates for me. As far as synchronicities and 5-MeO DMT are concerned, in the days and weeks after having smoked it, when I have done it, I like things that happen after will feel like memories from the experience, even though there was no actual visual or like tangible experience with the 5-MeO DMT. And it's almost like I kind of envision it like if all of reality is like a loaf of bread, the days and weeks after, you kind of get these little slivers and slices. I say like it's like deja vu. It's totally like deja vu, except I had never had the experience before. I can't find words for it. Another weird thing that comes up is that I'll smell it. You know, I'll smell the 5-MeO, I'll smell the toad venom all the time after the fact. And I hear about that with DMT too, that people smell it afterwards. And I'll taste it. You smell it all the time too, Toby?
Yeah, they taste similar,
Mm,
which I think is interesting based on my
yeah,
experience. I think that 5 and NM taste similar.
I think they taste pretty similar too. And it's just, I remember biting into a piece of toast the day after I smoked the toad venom last time, and I was like, "Oh my god, this tastes like toad. This is so weird." Um, that's a pretty far out experience. Um, I saw something up here in the comments. David asked, "Do you weigh the 5-MeO? What weight to start? Then how to increment the breakthrough?" So, to be clear, I've never smoked pure 5-MeO DMT. I've only smoked the venom from the Sonoran desert toad, which also contains bufotenine and some other stuff. So with the toad venom, I think you're typically smoking around like 25 milligrams for like a sub breakthrough dose and like 45 for a breakthrough dose. But most of that is not 5-MeO DMT. A breakthrough dose of 5-MeO DMT is around 5 to 10 milligrams. And I think you can get a sub breakthrough dose with 1 to 2 grams of 5-MeO DMT. So have a good scale if you're going to weigh it, and definitely do weigh it.
Is it, do most people do the toad or do the pure 5 from some source? What do you think?
That's a great question. Probably for a really long time, more people were doing the synthetic because I don't remember what year it was, but 5-MeO DMT was only legalized in the United States. Does anybody know? I mean, it was
2011.
in like 2011, so that was just 9 years ago. And you could literally just like order jars of this stuff from the internet. Whereas
China mass produced it for a while.
Did they?
Yeah, in the early 2000s. So that was like a large access point for people who didn't have the bufo toad. So for a while, it was this like selective circle of people who worked with shaman toad practitioners. And then starting in 2011, anybody could basically order it off the dark web, or maybe even the clear web at a certain point.
Yeah, I'm super bummed that I didn't pick up a huge quantity of 5-MeO DMT when it was legal. That would have been pretty cool. But I didn't even really, I was scared of it at that time, 9 years ago. So I missed that opportunity.
I've been told that you have to be careful with the pure 5-MeO and not to overdose. So, but I don't know. That's just
yeah, very much so. It's a super low dosage. I know a lot of people volumetrically dose it, where they'll weigh out 100 doses at once with some liquid, so then you can use dilution to know how much you're taking.
Do you know what solvent they're using?
Probably propylglycerine, but I would have to like do some checking to see what it's soluble in.
Okay.
I don't know from personal experience, but I have read about people taking too much 5-MeO DMT. A point worth noting is that in N DMT, you can like take basically an infinite amount of it. Nobody has ever died just from taking N DMT. Whereas I do believe that there are cases of people dying from taking 5-MeO DMT. And I think it's always when it's combined with an MAOI. And this comes from really irresponsible use. You know, you have to take a lot of it to have these problems, or have a really irresponsible shaman. People have died that way too, but that's from neglect, not from the actual substance itself. So yes, much care is required when taking any substance ever for any reason, and more care is required for 5-MeO DMT than N DMT, because there are.
Have you seen the video of Hamilton Morris with the 5-MeO episode?
I haven't seen that, no.
Okay, well, I basically would call it a showcase in what not to do with 5-MeO DMT.
Mm-hmm.
The shaman doses him right by the river, and with 5-MeO DMT, sometimes the body has a lot of activity. So instead of being in a safe, soft room, this guy's thrashing around near a river.
Yeah, that's totally not cool. And like, nobody should ever work with a person who works in that way. And I know that there's a couple of toad shamans out there who have done a really horrible job with people's safety. They like, this is not the point, but you know, if you're going to work with any substance, with a shaman, with a facilitator, really quiz your facilitator, make sure you're comfortable with them and they're not a terrible person.
Yeah, I think unfortunately there's a theme of this happening in psychedelic circles in general, but especially with something this powerful. I've heard a lot of horrible stories. So I don't know, go somewhere reputable, do some research, do a lot of research, ask a lot of questions.
I mean, the people that I worked with were referred to me by somebody that I love and trust. And I would think that is probably the best way to do it. Like, find out from a friend that like, this person is safe. I worked with them. They're cool. There's a couple questions in the chat that I wanted to address. The first one is from Stuart, who says, I've only used N DMT. I've always used it late at night, 25 to 40 milligrams. I find that I don't remember much. Like a dream, it's fleeting. Any pointers on retaining the memories?
Yeah, so I got something to say about that, and I think Elevated Paradigms hit it really well. The idea of the dream voice technique, where you record your thoughts with a voice recorder and then transcribe it later. So I really think it's really helpful to, when you come out of the DMT experience, it's like a dream. It'll slip through your fingers. I think it's really, really important to tell somebody, whether it's a voice recorder or your trip sitter, about your experience, and then write it down or video record it and transcribe it later.
Yeah.
I really think that helps. Just immediately regurgitating it verbally really helps, I think, integrate the experience. I'm curious on your thoughts though.
I agree with that. And it is, as you've both said, like a dream. Like, you need to get on it right now. Like, the second you can speak, you've got to start talking to your recorder, because otherwise it's going to be gone. There's also a reality about N DMT. Well, there's a reality about all psychedelic experiences, but definitely these two in particular. The experience is so far out that there's a lot of it that you're just not going to be able to bring home, because it's sort of like, you know, for a moment in time, you suddenly get downloaded with this ability to like understand a language that you don't speak. And then you lose it, and all of your memories are still in this old language. So it's kind of impossible to bring it all back. It's too far away from conventional reality. Although I will say that, you know, Terence McKenna has talked about like having gone in so many times that, you know, he gets to a point where he's starting to be able to bring things back. I personally have not had that many experiences with DMT where I can bring a lot of them back. I mean, when I do ayahuasca, I've got a journal right next to me. And when I smoke DMT, I pick up my phone and I start talking the second I come, before I'm all the way down. You know, the second I can push the record button, that's when I start talking to my phone.
The trick is to push the record button before you do the DMT.
Oh, that's smart. That's smart. I'll do that next
Then you
time.
don't have to push the record button. You just have to word. And not that words are easy, but then you don't have to like technology.
Yeah, not having to technology is very nice.
Yes, we got a question in the chat from David a while back that I like. What's the best technique for smoking DMT?
You know what? I've only tried one method of smoking DMT. Toby, do you? And I know about a few of other methods of smoking DMT, but have you tried a variety of methods, Toby? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time
You've done some research.
unsuccessfully trying to do DMT. Uh, I've done a lot of market research.
Okay.
Smoking DMT is crap. Like anything with a lighter, you're gonna burn it. Highly recommend dabbing it, e-nail, quartz banger, heat it red hot, and then vaporize it. That way you can do it all in one hit. A lot of the time, like if you're using a vapor burner, like a meth pipe, you have to do like 3 hits. Then you got this hot ass glass pipe that you have to like pass off while you're like blasting off, and it's no fun. And it's how you burn
It's how you burn what?
your house down.
Oh.
Is you pass off this hot pipe that you like heat it up because you got a meth pipe full of DMT.
Okay.
So dab DMT is my non-professional advice.
So do you have to have it prepared in a certain way to be able to dab it, or can you just dab the freebase?
You can just dab it, like at least with NN. I'm sure you can dab it as well with 5, but I've only ever vaporized 5 in like a vape pen.
Yeah. I've only ever done the sandwich method with N DMT, so like that is, yeah, I know. I'm lame. For those of you who don't know, the sandwich method is you put some kind of herb, maybe weed, but if you're me, weed is terrifying, so you don't do that. I use passion flower. I'll put a layer of passion flower in a pipe, then I'll put some DMT on top of that, and then another layer of passion flower, and I light the passion flower on top, and then the heat from that, in principle, will vaporize the DMT underneath. And do what Toby said. That's what smart people do. Passion flower it's a tea. It's just an herb. And it supposedly has a small amount of MAOIs in it. But like not as much as you would get in like Changa. Like, usually Changa has a pretty good amount of them where you're actually getting affected by it. I don't think you get affected by the amount of MAOIs in the passion flower. So to answer about how to smoke 5, how I have smoked the toad venom, first of all, you're starting to lose touch with your body before you're done inhaling. So it's really, really, really helpful to have somebody else handling the pipe. I don't think I could do it on my own. So the way it works is there's like this kind of, it doesn't look like a hand, but there's a pipe that's like shaped like that, kind of, maybe kind of like that, like my hand and this, and then like a little vial screws in here where my second pointer finger is, and they put the venom in the bottom of that vial, and the guy holds the pipe up to your mouth and with a butane torch vaporizes it from the bottom of the vial, and it comes up through this pipe. And yeah, you count to 10, and around the time you hit like 3, you're starting to lose touch with everything, and by the time you get to 10, things are getting pretty spacey. I know there's a lot of other methods for smoking 5-MeO DMT. I've read a lot about them on DMT Nexus, but I don't know.
Have you ever snorted 5-MeO?
Me?
Yeah, we got a chest.
No, I've never snorted. I've not snorted a lot of things in my life. It makes my nose feel funny. I don't even know if you can snort 5-MeO. Well, you can do it in Yopo, but I don't know about, oh yeah, you can totally snort freebase, not free. You can totally snort 5-MeO DMT. There we go. I said it, but I've never done it. It's a different preparation than the kind that you smoke though.
Yeah, it's freebase versus fumarate, right?
I guess so. I know the freebase is what you smoke. I'll take your word on that. Fumarate. Anybody in here ever snorted DMT or 5-MeO DMT?
Yeah.
No? Well, it seems like there's a lot of people are pretty stoked on the magneto vaporizer for DMT. I guess that works really well. Those of you who like it, what do you like about it?
With the magnetopipe, one of the things that I don't like about it is that there's no open flame, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you just light it and smoke it just like any other vape pen, really. It's really easy.
Cool. And were you able to have a breakthrough experience, or because I've heard from a lot of people that have done it in a vape that it's hard to actually break through into hyperspace?
Some people may have, but when I was using it, that was not my intent. So
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And actually, on that subject, I think maybe it's worth talking a little bit about the different levels of experiences, especially with DMT. You know, 5 is a little bit more like on off, but there's several layers for DMT, and of course, there's always this hyperspace that people talk about a lot. What's your experience been with that, Toby?
So I'm actually a big fan of low doses of N DMT, and I feel like that's not what a lot of people say. I find it really grounding, really body centric. It feels wonderful to like do a little bit and then like stretch and do yoga. It feels very grounding. Do a little bit to meditate. So I was microdosing it with my morning like marijuana, and it was very wonderful to like do a little bit and just like meditate.
Mm-hmm. What, to the best of your ability to put it into words, what is microdosing DMT like? I just can't imagine the concept of microdose and DMT at the same time.
It feels very body centric. I feel very, I don't know, maybe my body feels pleasurably tingly. I feel very in my body, but very comfortable in my body, very body aware.
Interesting.
And then, I don't know, like very mentally present.
That's so interesting to me, because like the majority of my N DMT experiences have been full-on breakthroughs, like hyperspace experiences, which are very not body centric. So it's just hard for me to wrap my head around that. I'll try it one of these days. Laura
Yeah, just like some low doses, just dab a teeny bit.
One day I'll get on that teeny bit
Just
bandwagon.
wake up on some day when you don't have work and try a tiny bit, and then go do some yoga and you'll love it. I promise.
I mean, yoga and psychedelics is one of my favorite combinations of all time. But I like doing it on mushrooms or acid because I have like 4 to 12 hours.
Yeah, but DMT like makes time irrelevant.
Okay, valid. We've got a couple of questions in the chat. Laura asks, this one's definitely for you, Toby. Is the half-life longer in the sub-perceptual doses?
No, I'd say I'm still back to baseline within 20 minutes.
Okay. Do you feel it for that whole 20 minutes? Because like for me, when I'm having the big breakthrough doses of DMT, it's like, you know, for a billion years / for about 5 minutes, I'm in breakthrough. And then for like 20 minutes, I'm kind of tapering back to baseline.
Yeah, so that whole thing is that like tapering back to baseline feeling is what I get from like that microdosing, where I feel more present, but I never like left. I never got rocketed out.
Got it. Elevated Paradigms asks, has anybody had any telepathic experiences?
Not on this substance, but on other substances.
What substances have you had telepathic experiences on?
LSD gives you telepathy abilities.
Okay.
Or can in the correct set and setting with magic LSD.
I've had, you know, some borderline telepathic experiences with like former lovers of mine on mushrooms. I don't know about LSD. But it's only
give you borderline telepathic abilities.
I think so. You know, I can't prove it.
Well, you should run some science experiments that are like unobjective or unbiased and fully objective, and let us know.
I'll do that for you, Toby. I will take mushrooms just so that I can report back to you on how that experience goes. Who wants to research telepathy with me and mushrooms? All right.
So we got a question about eyes open or eyes closed. What's your opinion about this one? Do you do DMT with your eyes open or your eyes closed?
Closed. The first couple times I had them open and it was pretty far out. The second time I smoked DMT was my first breakthrough experience, and it was the day after I smoked it for the first time. And I had my eyes open, did not make a difference because I wasn't there. I was somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If you do enough DMT, I don't think it matters whether your eyes are open or closed.
Yeah. I smoked DMT 2 years ago, maybe it was the first time in several years that I had gotten my hands on any. And I was also on acid at the time, which, by the way, my favorite way to consume DMT is when I've taken a pretty stout dose of mushrooms or LSD. And when I'm right at the peak, I think that's a perfect time to smoke some changa. Anyway, I was like in this room here in my apartment, and I was like looking at my guitar, had my eyes open, and it was just too much. It was too much. The visuals were too intense, and I just like had to lay down on the ground and close my eyes. And it's not that the experience got any less intense, but it was just something that I could handle with my eyes closed for some reason.
Yeah, so we got a question about what does a breakthrough experience mean? So I'd say in the experience, it's like a breakthrough experience is where the hallucinations are overwhelming or more real than reality, where you open your eyes and you're not in your room, you're in some DMT space.
Yeah, and like with breakthrough experiences, we're talking about going into hyperspace, and you know, you've either been to hyperspace or you haven't. It's kind of impossible to understand, although, as Toby mentioned, looking at the Alex Gray paintings can definitely give you a pretty solid idea of what it might kind of look like. But one of the hallmarks of the breakthrough experience is the entities. I've experienced entities a few times in my life. I know Toby mentioned having experienced entities a few times in his life, and that's a breakthrough. Yeah. And also going back to the telepathy question, all communication with entities, in my experience in hyperspace, is telepathic. It's not that they're actually talking to you. It's that you're like being communicated to.
Yeah, they beamed me knowledge, I guess.
Yeah.
No words in the DMT space. Everything was like made out of information, and then they look at you and then you go and download stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who else agrees besides elevated paradigms? Desi, yeah, cool. Kess, not sure. Sweet. So Toby, I see that you've had breakthrough experiences with LSD and nitrous.
Yeah, separate or combined, but I don't think like a breakthrough experience is necessarily tied to just like a DMT experience.
Okay. Is it the same kind of breakthrough? Are you breaking through into hyperspace with those?
No, I broke through with LSD one time into like a limitless space. It wasn't hyperspace. It was whereas everything. I don't know. I've broken reality with like nitrous before.
Oh, Desi says that when he was on shrooms, he was told about the Decriminalize campaign 6 months before it began. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've heard of people getting told things about the future. Like you said something about that earlier where you saw something from the future.
Yeah, that was when I saw all those different patterns, you know, months down the line. Pretty crazy. I've definitely had breakthrough experiences, I would say, on every psychedelic that I've ever taken. And there's definitely something really special about these two. Although I've had full-on non-dual experiences with LSD, with mushrooms. I've had, you know, God realizations, entheogenic experiences. Toby, I see that your laptop is in the red zone. Does that mean we're going to lose you?
I don't know. At some point, but we're going to keep talking until then.
Until you die? Okay.
Yeah, but I am in the danger zone.
Danger zone. Okay.
So you've had LSD or shroom experiences that are like overwhelming and all encompassing? Yes, no.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, ever since I took ayahuasca a year ago, every experience I've had has been really profound and really deep and really intense. And the first time that I took LSD in a setting where it was quiet and I was meditating after having taken ayahuasca, I just had this full-on non-dual thing where I kept on seeing these black pyramids and white pyramids, and I was recognizing how you can't have black without white, like they inter-are, they coexist. And then this phrase just entered my mind, when you realize you're the only thing that has ever existed, who are you going to tell? And that has really stuck with me. And like, it's kind of like a koan, you know? And in that state, I kept being like, oh, I'm going to call this person and tell them this. And I was like, oh, wait, I can't tell them because this is everything. I'm everything. And again, you know, when I say I'm everything, I don't mean me. I mean like all of everything is everything. What was that quote again? When you realize that you're the only thing that has ever existed. Oh, you want me to write it down? Yeah, it is really lonely, Carolyn. I was super sad when my ego started moving back in, and I was like, oh, poor me. All right, so I'm going to say it and I'm going to type it, elevated states, elevated paradigms. When you realize that you are the only thing that has ever existed, who are you going to tell? There it is. You save that. And interestingly, I got the changa that I have at my first ayahuasca retreat that I did. And when I started smoking that a few months later, I had some really far out experiences, and that's where the whole non-duality thing started for me. Oh, okay, I'm going to pause this story so that Toby can tell about our upcoming events before he dies.
No, you should finish your story and then I'll talk.
Okay, I'm going to finish my story and then Toby's going to talk. So here's story number 1, and then I'll pause. I was like in hyperspace, and for me, one of the things that's really notable about hyperspace is that like the background is like black. It's like a total infinite void. There's nothing. And then the foreground, whatever that means, because everything's going infinitely forever, but it's just like so bright. It's the brightest bright ever. It's like these pinpoints of infinite light, or lightscapes or whatever. So I was out in this space and I suddenly had the recognition that like I create everything in my reality. So like when I read something, I am actually the author of that book, because even though I'm not the person who put the words there, I am creating the reality of that story. Every time I listen to music, I'm the one taking the data in through my ears and turning that into sound in my brain. I'm like the creator of the experience. And without getting super in depth about it, that was like a total Atman Brahman realization for me, because I was like, oh my God, I'm like this little kernel of God because I'm creating my entire reality from scratch being all this stuff that's around. And then once you connect with the Atman, if anybody wants, I'll talk about what the hell that means. You just automatically expand out into Brahman, which is all of it. It's it. That's story number 1. Go ahead, Toby.
Okay, so I'm just going to hustle some upcoming events we have for Psychedelic Club. This Wednesday, we have an integration circle at 7 p.m. You can RSVP. There's a link on Facebook or Meetup. Next Monday, I think same time, Desmond's going to talk about psychedelics and psychology, basically. PTSD, psychology. I don't know, Desmond, what are you talking about?
Can't hear you, Desi.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
I'm mute. I'm unmuted
There we
now.
go.
Right. There I am. Yeah. So next week it'll be about got me all flustered. Bad trips, negative, or what's the difference between like a bad trip and a difficult experience? And my research, I'm a psychologist. I do a lot of stuff on trauma and resilience. So talking about how that can be like a therapeutic. There's potential FDA research happening with MDMA and assisted therapy and how that looks, and just kind of where we are with that, and talking a little bit about like EMDR and how that affects your brain and similarities between psychedelics and EMDR and that fun stuff. So just me rattling this off the top of my head. It'll be more in depth next week.
Cool. I'm excited for that, Desi.
Monday, 7 p.m. next Monday.
Go on our Facebook page, and I'm assuming that's a good place to get the Zoom link, right, Desi? Cool. Yeah, go on our Facebook page, check out the events, and listen to Desi talk about psychology. He has a PhD. He knows about stuff.
Yeah, Desi's a doctor.
You guys know. Yeah, check him out. He knows stuff.
The only other thing I can think of is my side project, Altered States Integration. We have integration talk tomorrow about COVID and reentry. If anyone wants to talk about the weird global situation going on right now, check us out, Altered States Integration on Facebook.
Awesome.
Yes, and our Facebook name is the same as the Meetup group. We should be Psychedelic Club of Denver on Meetup and Facebook. That's a great way to keep up to date. They both should always be up to date. For up-to-date schedule, Facebook is sometimes updated first and then Meetup follows. But they should both always be up to date. And Instagram usually will tell you as well if you want to follow us on Instagram at Denver Psychedelic Club.
Cool, David. Yeah, I'm actually super stoked about these Zoom meetings too, and it's been fun. I'm really so glad that we're able to connect with each other, and I also love the fact that you're coming here from Dallas. That's awesome. This is the Denver Psychedelic Club, but the psychedelic movement is global, so the more the merrier from everywhere.
I was so excited that when you guys got your decriminalized going, and we're working on that here in Dallas as well.
Awesome.
Although
you get it.
Further behind.
Although because Colorado and Texas have different the way the laws work, you can't just have voters vote laws in. You have to have legislators do that.
Okay.
And so that's the whole problem. So you could have 100% of the population wanting something, but if you got legislators that won't change the law, then that's the problem.
Gotcha.
So whereas Colorado, I forget what it's called, but Colorado has in their constitution that voters can actually vote by a certain percent can vote changes in the law directly without having to go through a legislation a proxy.
So, yeah, Colorado has ballot initiatives where people go out with petitions and blah blah blah, and in Texas there's a referendum, which is when legislators refer things to the ballot and people vote on it that way.
Okay.
It's really a bummer that there are these really foolish laws about these things, but thank God they're changing. I'm really so excited about that. And I'm so excited for everybody who is an activist in the movement. It's just incredible. It's so inspiring.
Yeah, right. That's something cool to see in the year post Denver decriminalizing psilocybin. We have 2 other cities who have actually decriminalized nature, expanded upon not just decriminalizing psilocybin, but decriminalizing DMT containing substances like ayahuasca in Santa Cruz and Oakland. That's now decriminalized. That's huge.
Yes, it is. And I'm such a big supporter of ayahuasca. I think that ayahuasca is probably the most important thing I've ever done with my life. Most significant thing I've ever done with my life is smoke 5 MeO DMT, but most important is taking ayahuasca, and I'm just so glad that the tides are turning with that. Alex asks, any mushroom cultivation meetings coming up? Pretty new. So I don't think that we have any mushroom cultivation meetings coming up, but check out the Shroomery. They have a lot of really good instructions on how to do that. If you're in Denver, totally grow your own mushrooms because no one will stop you. Just don't sell them.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing. And I've been checking Shroomery, but I bought so many books, and it's like there's 8,000 different techniques. So that's where I'm like, I just want to talk to people that do it. And if you like Shroomery, I found that's actually better than the books, I think.
I've learned so much from Shroomery.
Yeah, everything I know is from Shroomery. What method do you use, Toby?
My own method that I compiled from reading a bunch of different texts off of Shroomery. I use like a bucket tech with cocoa core, and then there's like 6 other texts for like agar bullshit.
Okay.
I would just read stuff off of Shroomery really and try it. Like read it 3 times and then try it, and every time I try it, my method works a little bit different. But yeah, check out Denver Mushroom Co-op on Facebook. They are much more about growing mushrooms than we are. We'll maybe have a meeting at some point, but Denver Mushroom Co-op shares tools, knowledge, all sorts of information. They had a meeting tonight. I don't know when their next meeting is, but check them out on Facebook.
Nice. Okay.
Cool.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
You got it. I have only ever done the PF tech successfully, and it's kind of a lot of work, but it does work. And I know it's supposed to be good for beginners. Toby seems to be pretty passionate about agar. So try agar. Yeah.
Agar's cool because you can put it on a plate and then you see if it's contaminated, and then you don't ever inoculate anything that's contaminated. You just cut it out and put it in the garbage.
Okay.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. I'm like you, Andrew. I did all the PF tech, but then I've been reading and I'm like, wait, this is like the hardest method. And get way more like growth from other methods, but I haven't gone there yet. So
yeah, to me it seems that PF tech isn't like challenging. It's just that you have to do so much, and then you don't get a ton out of it. PF tech is outdated. Okay, well, I'm outdated, Toby. Yeah, I'm gonna try something different next time. So bringing it back to DMT, although psilocin is, what is it, 4-hydroxydimethyltryptamine, I think, but it's still not DMT.
4-HO-DMT.
I don't know. I've got a couple more experiences to share.
Yeah, I got my hustle out of the way for upcoming events. Let's hear experience number 2.
Cool. So this is again with Changa, probably also on a pretty hefty dose of mushrooms. So this was also another big non-dual thing that happened. So I was out in the full, the void, the blackness of nothingness, and I just saw this immaculately white, bright outline of the Buddha. And then like right down the center, I saw a line get drawn right down the center of the Buddha, and I saw the perfect symmetry on the left side and the right side. And I was like, oh, cool. So when you're like perfectly in the center, everything's in balance and it balances out and there's nothing. And then I saw a line come out from the center line. And I was like, oh, so that's what our reality is. It's just this one little line that's off to the one side where you're not getting the other side balancing it out. So you get this experience. But the truth is that everything is in balance. Everything cancels out. Everything adds up to just the oneness that is. That was pretty far out. And I wanted to share my first ayahuasca experience, which happened, it was my second.
Yeah, birthday.
Yeah, birthday story. So this one would have happened exactly a year ago from today. I was experiencing a lot of conflict with a family member of mine. We hadn't spoken in 6 months or so. And when I was in the ayahuasca experience, I felt the phrase, hold a grudge, come across my consciousness. And I was like, what does that mean? What does that phrase even mean, to hold a grudge? And I suddenly, yeah, R.I.P. Andrew's old ego. We hope so. It was a big douchebag. So the phrase "hold a grudge" came across my consciousness. I said, "What does that mean?" And I suddenly found myself on a beach, and it was like I was really there. And I looked down in my hand, and I saw this like really dense, gross black object. It was like a black hole. It was sucking all the energy into it. And, you know, I just had this intuition that that was my grudges and my resentments. And then the phrase came into my head, like from the ayahuasca speaking, just said, love is electric. Love is like light. It'll lift you up. But not if you hold on to that. That'll weigh you down. Your grudges will keep you weighed down on the ground. Do you want to hold that? And I was like, no, I don't want to hold this. And I put it down. And I went home and called that person the next day, and we talked for an hour and a half, and we've been getting along really, really well for this last year. It was just probably the most healing experience I've ever had in my whole life. I really encourage you all to go try ayahuasca with somebody safe that you can trust. It's a really special experience. Anybody here besides me tried ayahuasca? We got 1, 2. Anybody want to share their ayahuasca experiences? No. Maybe.
So mine was dreadful because it was overly nauseating, and when you're managing your physical symptoms so much, things are spinning and you just don't get any insight. So I've done ayahuasca twice, thinking, oh, I didn't do it. You know, I did it at a church in New Mexico. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it was a very supportive environment, but I didn't like it. And so for me, that would be really low on my list. I've had much better experiences on psilocybin, you know, mushrooms and LSD, and have done a little bit of DMT, you know, a little bit of that, just a little bit, because it's very hard on your lungs to me. Because so that's where we talked about, I'd like to, we're going to get the dabber and see if we can just do it in one dose, because you're exactly right. If you have to, and it just hurts and it stinks. I mean, yeah, the walls move and you see colors, but it's very, very short lived. So I'd like to get the whole experience. Yeah. But I would say, for me, ayahuasca was the least profound. And I'm not sure if it's because if you just can't keep it down very long, it just doesn't take effect. You know what I mean? If you're hurling after 30 minutes. So in fact, one of the things that we're talking about is how to go ahead and extract a lot of the alkaloids out of the BCAPI part of it, so that you can still have the experience, but you have a lot less of those alkaloids. And I know that a lot of people will say, yeah.
We can't understand.
Oh, he said you can't.
Oh, sorry.
Could you not hear him?
Yeah, it was muffled.
Oh, sorry. So he was just talking about what we kind of work with people where the same thing, if the nausea experience is so intense, it's hard to see the benefits of the rest of it, as opposed to, you know, like I will get mild nausea on mushrooms, but it's so mild and it's over in 30 minutes that then the rest of the trip is just so awesome. And, you know, LSD, I don't experience any nausea. So I think a lot of it depends on the person. And so we're going to try to extract some of that out to see if you can reduce that enough, would it be just as fantastic, for instance, as everything else? In other words, just because something, you know, if you can manage that symptom, it might be better. So
interesting. I would love to hear how that goes with your extraction from the Banisteriopsis copy. Are you going to use Psychotria viridis for the DMT portion?
Let's see. You don't have that. Actually, we haven't thought that far ahead. We've been using the Harmony alkaloids extracted from Syrian rue and BCAPI in combinations with other things to get other effects, but
it'll extend the LSD and the mushroom trip.
I've heard that. Yeah.
You know, and in low doses, it's really nice. It's just that when you look at the ayahuasca dose to get the psychedelic experience versus the BCAPI amount, it's just overly nauseating. So.
Interestingly, you know, so as I mentioned, I took 1 year ago, I took ayahuasca 2 days in a row. The first day, pretty much all I did was throw up. And I had some mild visions, but pretty much I just purged. And the really, for me, cool thing about that was that it was so needed. And again, I can only speak for myself. But I experienced that like the medicine was combing through my body and extracting all of the
crap.
Yeah, all of the crap that was left. And it was from my thinking. I mean, I used to have a drinking problem. I used to smoke cigarettes, and I used to smoke marijuana all day, every day. And I'm a huge supporter of cannabis. However, I was using it in a really unconscious fashion. So I do think that there was some deposits from that. But mostly the message that I got was that crap that was left in my body was from my thinking, from my grudges, my resentments, my, you know, trying to be superior, judging people, judging myself, not loving myself, not loving other people, all of those things. And that's what I was throwing up. And the next day I felt like a new person. I felt so great. I only slept for 45 minutes. And then I took it again the next day and I threw up some more. And then I had the visions, you know, so.
That's good that you can that you can frame it in that way. And it's wonderful, but it's some, you know, I guess it depends. I think that what we've seen is that if you can avoid with almost any technique, if you can avoid, now it still doesn't mean you shouldn't prep. You should probably fast, for instance, or have certain foods for a while and then fast for maybe a day before, because the effect will be so much better. You need an empty stomach to get a good effect for any of these things that are taken orally.
That's true.
So it helps quite a bit. So anyway.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think that the diet is really important. And I actually feel that a healthy diet, a nourishing diet going into any medicine, not just the ones that have MAOIs, is a really good idea. And then you'll get more out of your medicines that way.
Yeah.
Anybody on here have any DMT experiences they'd like to share that may not be, yeah, I've been waiting for you, man. What you got?
All right. So, mine. Oh, so I had already was coming to terms with well, first of all, I quit smoking cigarettes a year ago this past September.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. But I picked up vaping like hardcore.
Okay.
And I realized it was like messing with my teeth and this and that, and it was like a freaking pacifier. And as I was coming up on 2 psilocybin chocolates equivalent to 2 grams, I dropped my mod. So I figured, well, I'll just set the intention to quit. And so that was my first time, also my first time trying changa, and only time so far. And that really kicked in the psilocybin, and backed by multiple hits of DMT out of a volcano bag, which is like a
the vaporizer, right?
Yes. That pretty much confirmed all the cosmic holy shitness I kind of already knew. There was some kind of writing, what I can only describe as like Aztec or some kind of tribal.
I've seen that too with DMT.
Yeah. And there was definitely at least 2 to 3 different presences. One was negative, and I just kind of ignored that, but 2 were positive, and what they were conveying was two main things really, and that's what I'm only here for a short period of time, and I need to take better care of this body I have here, and that I'm here to just observe and learn as much as I can and help as much as I can. And yeah, so I haven't, other than like a handful of times, like 2 times actually, very spread out, I haven't touched them.
Amazing.
Yeah. And
That's
like
incredible.
when I did, it was like, what the heck am I doing? You know, after smoking most of my life.
Thank you for sharing, man. That's really wonderful. I have some quitting experiences with psychedelics too. I got into a really bad place with alcohol, and I had an LSD experience where I realized for the first time in my whole life that I actually, as an adult, that I actually could live without it. And then last year, after taking ayahuasca, I fasted from cannabis for a week, which, as I said, I was taking in a really unconscious way. After taking ayahuasca, I just lost interest in smoking cannabis anymore. And now when I smoke it, it terrifies me, so I just don't do it. And that's just this incredible power of psychedelics to like help us get past things and heal things, cure things. It got rid of my depression. It's far out. It's just so far out. And that's why I'm such a big supporter of them and advocate for them. Does anybody else have any experiences with DMT that they'd like to share, or 5-MeO? I think I'm the only one here who smoked 5-MeO, right?
Yeah, I was gonna talk actually on the ayahuasca.
Great, let's hear about it.
That's I mean, I've had too many experiences. I wouldn't even know which one to share, but that's like that is my favorite. I think for me, there's a lot of enlightenment, so to speak, with the like mushrooms and others. But I really felt like this is like a medicine. So it seems like it's more like it's a medicine that just happens to be psychedelic versus
totally
other ones. And so even that, like, I've gone through ceremonies where I don't throw up and ones that I do, and I actually like the throwing up because I do feel like it's getting crud out of my system. And so it's not something to be afraid of. And then just in comparing that with smoking DMT is, for me, smoking DMT, it's just so short of an experience. It's like, oh, you know, this is like cool, but it's short. And so as far as like really having an experience where you're going forward at 6 hours or longer, in ayahuasca, even though you don't necessarily go, like you said, as far out, it just, there's this time to really like process and really see what's going on before you.
Totally. And I really resonate with what you said about ayahuasca being a medicine. And I think that's one of the really big differences between ayahuasca and smoking DMT is that, I mean, I think they can all be used medicinally, but the ayahuasca is about healing a little bit more, and you can get enlightenment experiences from it too. And DMT is a little bit more about like wisdom, sort of, and it's kind of wisdom that we can't even understand. Still both great, and I love them both. Does anybody else have any other experiences, questions they'd like to put out there?
I'll share my kind of failed DMT experience. Sorry,
please.
I'm having to make dinner here. Give me a second.
Love your blue blockers.
Oh, I know, they're so good. Fit my face just perfectly. So I had kind of like, I'm still trying to figure out like what my DMT experience exactly was, because maybe like 2 weeks before I had done a pretty, I mean, like a very high dose experience of psilocybin. I was like very much in the depths of recovery for bulimia, and was doing it in order to, get clarity around it or shed it or whatever. I think I've told that story in this group before. But basically it's actually like kind of a hilarious story, because this guy that I met through a friend told me he had DMT, and I've been trying to get my hands on it forever. And I felt like, oh my God, it's found me. And so he gave me his like crack pipe to use and his torch, which I had not used before either of those devices. And I did it alone in my room at home, which was normally how I always did like high doses of psychedelics. So I kind of like trusted that I would be okay. And I basically, like, he didn't have the metal bit that you actually put the thing in the bowl. And so I don't think I thought it through, and I like weighed it out and I put it on a piece of paper, and then I got the bowl like so hot that it was like bright red and I tried to put it in, but then it like melted the paper and it just didn't work. So then I went round 2 and I did it much more successfully, but it was very hard I found it very hard to inhale. Like I ended up taking like 3 hits of it, and then just like, by the time I could like barely put it down, like you said, earlier kind of fire hazard. But definitely I was like somewhere else. Like I had my eyes open, but it was like incredibly visual, and the whole field of everything was, I mean, just like crazy colors and crazy geometry and patterns. And there was definitely like some audio elements to it as well.
Yeah.
But it couldn't have lasted more than 2 minutes. I didn't have like I didn't actually time it, but it couldn't have been, it felt very, like after spending like 4 hours in that space, like a week or two prior to then do that, like it just felt it felt fast. So I would love to do it again, but that was my experience.
Yeah, you know, so I think there's kind of like 3 levels for DMT, maybe 4, but the 4th one I think you kind of can't remember. So the first level is just like the lowest dose, which is like what Toby was talking about. Maybe actually there's 5 levels, and the 5th level you can't remember. So the lowest dose is this like body high. I've never experienced it, but Toby likes it. The second one is kind of like mushrooms, but for 2 or 3 minutes, you know, like where you're getting visuals all over the place. That's where I saw this like alien Aztec language all over the room. And then there's another level up from that where you're like definitely tripping, but you're not in hyperspace. Like you're getting visuals, you're getting closed eye visuals that are pretty intense. Maybe you're getting some wisdom, but you're still you, and you're like laying in your bed or wherever you are. And then above that is level 4, where you've got entities and the like infinite landscapes of light, and maybe God is there, who knows. And then I guess the 5th level is a blackout. But I don't know, does one of those levels sound like where you might have been with that?
I would say I was like around level 3, because it was definitely not like, there were definitely closed eye visual. And the visual, like it wasn't like I was having like mild visuals, like the entire spectrum of what I was seeing was different, you know, like I wasn't like in my room. I was somewhere else.
Okay.
But I wasn't like fully there. It was almost like I could see it, but you know what I mean? Like I was there, but I wasn't like fully, like I could still kind of maintain that what I was doing. Like, whereas when I did that high dose of psilocybin, like I had no concept of like my body or reality. Like, I mean, I didn't have like arms or you know, I was just like pure consciousness, like floating around in this crazy, I had no idea if my eyes were open or closed. Like it was like that. And this was like I was looking at that, but I knew that I was looking at it, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think that I can put that within the space of my own experiences. And I think that I understand what you're talking about. But of course, every experience is so personal.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you to get all the way out there.
Yeah, same. I'm ready. I've got my spacesuit on.
Yeah, bring your helmet.
Bring my glasses.
Anyone else? Thoughts, questions?
Can I ask a question for for you and the group, especially you two, since do you find that we have found that if you are a heavy cannabis user, okay, it tends to affect your psychedelic experiences?
100%.
Yeah, and not in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. I think it's the same with alcohol.
And
but
inclusive of CBD.
Can't understand you.
And maybe even more so the CBD is what we're finding, but we want to research that more. So any comments on that from the audience or yourself?
You know, for me, I think that cannabis gives me anxiety. When I'm taking psychedelics, I don't smoke cannabis. I basically don't smoke cannabis, period, anymore. But when I've taken psychedelics and smoked cannabis at the same time, it kind of like brings me down. And like, I'm taking psychedelics to get out there.
Yes.
You know, I'm not taking psychedelics to be here, because I can be here right now.
Yeah. And see, I feel like, so this is very subjective. So I don't want to insult anybody who does like cannabis, but I feel the same way. It kind of dummies you down. It depresses what, in fact, you want to soar. You want to go to, you know, the next, what I would call the next level. And you can't do that. And I would also say that people that are heavy cannabis users, that when we introduce them to psychedelic experiences, they don't get there as well, and they experience a lot more nausea.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but he's a doctor, so we do think about those kind of things, managing symptoms. Do you see what I mean? And so it may seem like we're obsessed with nausea, but for instance, when it's no different if you come out of surgery, people don't like to feel nauseous. It's a difference if you're utilizing something and everything. It seems like cannabis users, everything, even LSD, makes them nauseous. So,
I believe you. I don't know from personal experience, but I do know that regular cannabis users have a reputation in ayahuasca circles for being the people that are puking all night. And often they puke too soon and they're unable to get the experience from the medicine because they lose it before it's in their stomach long enough.
Yeah, and so that's two ways that it hurts you, is that you don't have the medicine in your stomach as long. But in addition, I think that there's a huge difference in the sensitivity. In other words, it may take more than twice as much of the psychedelic, whatever it may be, to get the same effect, which makes it kind of difficult if someone says, well, it was, I got sick and I barely didn't really get there. Plus I threw it up on top of that. So there's like three things working against you. So, but anyway, it's just an observation. So I'm just curious about it. We're kind of collecting data on trials with and without CBD, sometimes adding THC, because THC and CBD are kind of like antidotes for each other. So anyway, just interesting.
Anecdotally, I'm on your page, but I haven't studied it in any kind of rigorous way.
What about anybody else in the group?
What was the original question?
I'm not a heavy cannabis user. I rarely use it, but I found when I'm on mushrooms that so I'm already high, that it actually just extends my thing. It doesn't. So I'm not experiencing what you guys are talking about. I guess I utilize like all the master plants, so to speak, and
yeah, I've also heard this. Sorry, but I've also heard what you're describing. I've also heard that story too. So who knows? It's puzzling.
Well, once again, I'm not a regular user, so I just use it at the.
Yeah, I also don't smoke cannabis a ton. Like I smoke indica. Sometimes I normally smoke indica like right before bed, or I have like an indica gummy before bed. But I definitely have smoked weed on both mushrooms and LSD, and it just like, I would say if I'm like 3 or 4 hours in, like kind of past my peak on mushrooms, it just like brings all the visual aspect like back up to peak. And it's like an amazing feeling. Like the two are definitely
same.
Friends.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I agree with you too. That's more. I don't like it at the beginning, but kind of at that peak, it's like boom, it takes off again. And it's like, oh shit. So yeah, I've kind of been more with those two said too.
It's almost like you're like ready to unfasten your seatbelt, and then you like smoke a bit of weed, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna strap back in. It's cool. It's good.
Desi points out that psychoactive drugs are subjective experiences, which I think, is a good point. And I think that, lends some reasoning to why we all have such different experiences with it. More thoughts or questions, anybody? Cass, lovely to see you. It's been what, like 2.5 months now?
In person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share an experience that I had with an N DMT a few years ago.
Great.
And I just recently was reintroduced to it about a week ago, and I'm starting to integrate it into my life more, and I'm really excited about it. But both times I had this feeling where I hadn't broken through, and that's not my intent yet. I feel like I'm preparing myself for it almost. But both times I felt like it's almost like an ethereal experience. Like there's same realms occupying the same space, and you can kind of like trip into those realms. And the first time I'd had it, my dog was a puppy, and it was probably definitely one of the most beautiful experiences that I'd ever had, because she was so little, and her soul, I was watching her playing on the carpet, and her soul would move, and then her body would follow the soul.
Wow.
Which was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
That's amazing.
Very nice.
I love that.
People say that like dogs know. whenever I've never actually tripped around an animal, but everyone says like animals know.
It's sad how we're conditioned to think that the animals don't have souls. I completely disagree. They do.
Everything has a soul. Plants have souls.
Yeah, I felt that was like my first experience when I ever did mushrooms, and all of a sudden these dogs that I've been living with, all of a sudden it's like I knew them on this totally different level, and they seemed to know that I was on their level at the same time.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I do also want to note something that's exceptionally important, that some people, not myself, I have moral disagreements with this, but some people will give their dogs marijuana or psilocybin or whatever. But I have read 2 separate accounts where smoking DMT smoke into a dog's ear or down their mouth or whatever, it collapses their lungs. So it's to be very mindful that that's one that it's like, just don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think don't give drugs to animals.
Yeah.
In general, but I guess especially not DMT, huh?
Probably not DMT.
Wow, thank you for sharing, Cass. Would anybody else like to share anything? All right, so I have some things that I wrote down. This is from my journal from after the times that I smoked 5-MeO DMT. And my primary reason for being on here is to talk about 5-MeO DMT. Because as I said, it's the most, I think it's just the experience, it's the most significant experience. It's being with the oneness of all that is. So this is when it was really fresh for me. And it's so hard to put words on it, but I'm just gonna say some things. So nothing exists.
Yeah, probably.
I am everything and I am nothing.
You can double it if you do.
It was already always everything. Everything already is. Everything is, yet it is not. Everything is love, but it can't be, because to say it is that implies that it's not something else. Everything is thus. It is nothing. Everything is all of everything is God, except one thing, God. God is everything else. It's kind of like saying the same thing over and over again in different ways. I cannot talk to you without an ego, and you cannot listen. And this ego covers the truth, and yet it is part of the truth. This is part of the joke. What is the joke? You are. The second you think there is an everything, there is only a nothing. The second you think there is nothing, you realize that nothing is something, that the way it is the way that it is, that it couldn't be any other way, and that this is extraordinarily obvious. Something implies nothing, just as left implies right, as up implies down, that consciousness implies non-consciousness. Before I smoked the toad venom, I thought the whole yin yang thing, the non-duality, was kind of this like cutesy talk about like left can't be without right. And now it just seems like the truest thing ever. That none of the, like, this is the only way that things could be. That this is the experience, that this is the truth, that this is the reality. And I'm so in support of the 5-MeO DMT experience. It changes everything. And I'm so in support of the DMT experience. It changes everything. And ayahuasca changes everything. David asked for me to share out that stuff from the journal, so I will. I could talk about, oops, sorry, I sent that to Elevated Paradigms privately. Sorry, man. There, I think I sent it to everybody. Yeah, there it is. So I could talk about this stuff for basically the rest of my life. Ever since I've had psychedelics, it's pretty much been the number one thing on my consciousness. My first psychedelic was mushrooms, and ever since I had ayahuasca, and especially the toad venom, it's just been like the whole thing. So I'm here to talk about it as long as the rest of you would like to. Although I don't think that I have anything else on the top of my head to say right now. Anybody got anything left that they'd like to add? Any questions, comments, statements? No? Oh, you're muted. Were you trying to say something over there? Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about talking. I forgot my mic was on. But yeah,
That's
no,
okay.
we were just saying thanks. We enjoyed that.
It was very good.
So we
Thank
copied
you.
it here so I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Come back next week for Desi talking.
Yeah, because so like I said, I'm so excited that we did the Austin meeting yesterday or the day before, and we're doing a Denver meeting from Dallas, and we couldn't do this. And as I was looking, it makes me realize that folks, that if we continue doing these as Zoom meetings, I mean, you may lose something, but think about the potential for people anywhere. So it's kind of cool that you could pick and choose, every different cities. I noticed in Portland has a big following. And so that's pretty cool. So keep it up if you can.
I'm really hoping to, we meet on Monday nights in person. That's what we've been doing. But I've been loving being able to connect with people electronically. So I think it'd be super cool if we do both, once we're able to go back in person, because, here we are able to connect across cities, and eventually we'll be able to expand out into, the rest of the world. So super glad that you're here. And, I'm glad all of you are here. And for those of you that are in Denver, come to our meetings once we have them again. I think Toby was talking about wanting to have some in-person meetings, like outside social distance meetings, starting in June. But I'm gonna talk to Toby about doing the electronic meetings, maybe on like a different day of the week, so that we can keep going with both. Or maybe we can just bring a laptop to the meetings we do in person and broadcast. Maybe we'll do all of the above. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Love you all. So nice to see the familiar faces and, make some new friends, see some old friends. You're wonderful. Thanks for being part of the movement. And
you resemble the remark for old friends.
Pardon?
Just don't rub it in. I said you resemble the remark for old friends, but just don't rub it in.
You're the youngest one. You're the youngest friend here. Thank you so much for being here, and we hope we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Cool. Bye.
Later.